We need to talk about the fact that Israel and Palestine are sitting on $500 million worth of fossil fuels. It's important to always keep a resource context on these kinds of conflicts because people will often weaponize ideology. It's really easy to call this a religious war and everybody back away from the conflict because it's too complex to understand. Ideology is often weaponized by those who are totally morally bankrupt to control those who are oriented towards values. We know now that Iraq was invaded because the US and the UK wanted access to their oil reserves. So, let's talk about the fossil fuels in the middle of this conflict. Over the past decade and a half, some of the biggest new gas fields have been discovered off the coast of Israel and Palestine. That includes the 22 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in the Leviathan gas field, which could power Israel for 40 years single-handedly. This is important because Israel has typically been a net importer of energy, meaning that they are dependent on other countries for their fuel. As we saw when Russia invaded Ukraine, that's not a great idea to be dependent on other nations when geopolitical tensions are rising around the world. Now, because Russia invaded Ukraine and the EU slapped it with a whole bunch of sanctions that they are not doing with Israel, which has been pointed out by numerous Irish members of the European Parliament, the EU is now looking for new sources of gas. So in summer 2022, the EU signed a memorandum of understanding with Israel and Egypt, who was in the deal, to import some of this gas that's been found off the coast of Israel and Palestine. It could be a reason as to why the EU is avowedly backing Israel. It's pretty easy to do when they've got your gas. And a reason why this fits the USA? Well, LNG, liquid natural gas, is now being branded around the world as a transition fuel between fossil fuels and renewable energy, purely because it's a bit cleaner than coal. But it's not a transition fuel, it's a fossil fuel. Another reason for this could be because the United States is the largest producer and exporter of liquid natural gas around the world. Everybody's worried about the petrodollar losing its power. Well, if you get the entire world to go to gas before you use renewable, the United States still gets to maintain its power and its hegemony in controlling energy resources around the world. There's a little problem in this story, though. You might have noticed that I've said that this gas is off the coast of Israel and Palestine. It is. And in 2011, the United Nations produced a report saying that the fossil fuels that had been discovered in Israel, in the West Bank, off the coast of Gaza, and in the Mediterranean Sea, of course, do not belong purely to Israel. And in fact, this $500 billion worth of fuel could be used to negotiate peace, for example. But the story goes back even further. So whilst the biggest deposits have been found in the past decade and a half, people have known about fossil fuels off the coast of Gaza for some time. And in 1991, the Palestinian National Authority had a license to extract and export some of that fossil fuel. The company that they were partnered with, BGG, was going to take the majority of the profits, and Palestine was going to get 10%. The Israeli administration at the time signed off on that. But then power changed in Israel and a right-wing government came in. They took the deal off the table, said Palestine wasn't allowed to do that. And then another left-of-center government came in and they put the deal back on the table, saying that Palestine was allowed to do that. And then another right-wing Israeli government comes in, doesn't kill the deal exactly, but goes behind the backs of the Palestinian National Authority and starts to negotiate directly with BGG, the company, themselves, to try and cut Palestine out of the deal. The company walks away, it falls through. 6 months later, the Israeli government calls up BGG, saying they urgently need to renegotiate the deal, inviting them to the table. And we later find out that these negotiations were happening whilst Israel was planning the 2008 invasion of Gaza. So we know that there's fossil fuels off of Gaza's coast. We know that Israel's been after it for quite some time. We know that they've deliberately sabotaged Palestinian deals. We know that the world is in desperate need of gas, that the EU is in desperate need of Israel's gas, that the United States wants the whole world to transition to gas for now, and that the $500 billion that was estimated in 2011 would of course be much more now. And that's why everybody wants Gaza's gas. I'm a climate corruption journalist. I did an investigation into this. You can go and read the full piece on planetcritical.com.
Subscribe now.